at General Electric Global Research Center, Bangalore from 2015 to 2017. He has also worked as a lead engineer at GE Oil and Gas Advanced Technology Department, Bangalore from 2010 to 2015. His research areas includes turbulent reacting flows, aeroacoustics, and combustion dynamics. Currently, he is guiding two PhD students. He is also currently working on fundamental as well as conceptual design level studies in combustion, predominantly using simulation techniques. He is also having the software related knowledge of OpenFOAM, COMSOL, ANSYS Fluent, Converge, and the Altera. He's also working on some of the research projects related to say CFD, say for example multi-phase CFD simulations of diesel engine combustion chamber targeting low NOx and soot emissions. Also in combustion in propulsion applications. He has multiple referred journal publications such as validation of a modified eddy dissipation concept model for stationary and non-stationary turbulent diffusion flames, the mixing enhancement in compact trapped vertex combustor, and many more. Sir, we are fortunate to have you for this particular session on CFD of turbulent combustion in gas turbines and IC engine. Thank you very much, sir. You can start your presentation now, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Marishi, and for the nice and elaborate introduction. So I was thinking that I will brief about myself, but I don't need to speak anymore. You have given a pretty comprehensive introduction. So if you hear about my introduction, like I worked after my PhD at Indian Institute of Science. I worked for a pretty long duration in industry, almost 8 years. I finished my PhD in 2010, and then 8 years I was working in GE and Siemens in their power gas turbine departments. And now from 2018 I have joined here, and I'm taking care of the IC engines course, and we are doing some research in IC engine, but predominantly my work has been focused on gas turbines, where I was working in industry. And now my research students are also working mostly in gas turbines and combustion. So that yeah, I was seeing through the agenda of this talk, and I don't think that there's much of discussion about combustion CFD in other talks. So there are many important things like basic fluid mechanics and aerofoils and cooling, heat and mass transfer, and HPC. And then so this conference is quite good. It is giving you a good pretty much good overview of all the different subjects. So I think this is the intake air breathing. So this is pure fluid mechanics, and then HPC, and mostly about the fluid mechanics. You are also having some multi-phase and the role of CFD in automotive systems. So here I think the speaker, maybe he will talk a little bit about automotive systems. Mainly they do it for intake and exhaust processes. But I think for combustion, nobody is talking. So that's why I think I can take some authority talking about combustion and how do we use CFD as an important tool in studying combustion. Because you see this equipments that are using combustion, we have coal-fired power plants, we are having gas turbine, IC engines, and all these things are not, the experiments are not so easy, because you are working with a high temperature environment, and there is some power getting produced, and that power has to be dissipated through some dynamometer. So it's not easy to make a setup for doing experiments, and that's why CFD comes to a very good aid there, because you can study the problem on a computer, you can simulate it, and of course that's not so easy. I will discuss the challenges in doing CFD for combustion, and because combustion itself is a complicated physics, there are many physics involved there, and now on top of that we are having turbulent combustion in all the real practical devices. So I will talk about the challenges, but if you are getting fairly reasonable CFD simulation, then you can save a lot of cost in doing testing of these gas turbines, which typically produce power for power generation. They are like 300, 400 megawatt gas turbines in combined cycle, which are powering our cities. So it's difficult to do testing always for all the small design changes that we want to do in gas turbine. Even in IC engine, the DG set, the marine engines, the big truck engines and all, it's difficult to do experiments. So CFD comes as a very useful aid there. So I will talk in this presentation basically a little about combustion in the world we are living and why the combustion is still important, why it is going to be important in future. People might talk about electric vehicles and all, but that is a very small picture of the global energy scenario. Even today, we are heavily dependent on combustion, and next many decades, combustion is going to power our world. So I will talk a little bit about that perspective, and then I'll talk about the challenges in combustion, the various physics involved. These are important because when you want to do CFD, then you need to understand what the physics you are trying to simulate. It's not simply the fluid mechanics over there or the heat transfer. You are having chemical reactions, turbulence, multi-phase. So why combustion modeling, CFD modeling is challenging? That's what we'll discuss. And then we'll discuss a little bit about turbulent combustion basics. So a little bit of introduction about this area is mostly like a teaching presentation, taking something out of textbook, and I'm highlighting that. And I think that is important to appreciate this field, combustion CFD. And after that, I will show some examples of studies that I've done during my PhD. And in industry, although I spent 8 years and I got exposure to many interesting problems out there, but unfortunately, you cannot publish too much in industry. Most of they are like 4 or 5 months project, and they are all classified information. They always don't like to share it. So few studies got published, so those things I can show in the talk. And other things I will just verbally talk and try to give some idea what kind of work people are doing in industry. So with that, I will just talk about combustion and why it is important. So this is a chart from a reference over here, the world's primary energy consumption. So till 1800s, we were a nice agricultural hunter-gatherer society, and we were not dependent on combustion for power. So basically, we were burning biomass, the orange color, for mainly cooking application, heating, and some metal extraction, some small processes, and all we were working like that. But the industrial revolution took place with James Watt's steam engine initially, and then we are having the steam turbine, the gas turbine, and the IC engine. So all these things are burning fuel for producing power. So that's where our society transitioned, and till then we were using combustion only for what it is most useful for heating, cooking, and some metallurgical processes. But when you start making power out of combustion, then after that you see industrial revolution, better standards of living, more and more devices providing you comfort, and you give power to the world, the society develops, and then it grows its appetite for power. So the power demand has really increased, and you can see this is all basically the coal, which is firing your the thermal power plants, especially in India. It's quite important. It's still major supplier of electricity. The oil we are burning in automotives and also for power generation in some applications, the diesel generators and all for our apartments. So small things contribute a lot. So a lot of oil we are consuming, and everybody is worried about the oil prices nowadays. And the natural gas, which will be used in mainly gas turbines for producing power. And we are trying to go renewable, and these are the share of renewables as we have today. So maybe some purple or nuclear over here, some hydro, blue color, and solar, wind, geothermal, you can't even see in this scale. So I can safely say that more than 90% of our world's power. So I will try to replace this thing with 2020. There are many websites nowadays, and there are good a lot of discussion on these things. But still, our world is majorly powered by fossil fuel burning, coal, oil, natural gas, biomass in different forms. So all our energy is coming from there. And if this is the state of the renewables today, then you can safely assume, and then the world is having increasing power demands. So maybe definitely the renewables will increase, and they should increase. That is very good way forward. That is the only sustainable way forward. So even if the share of renewables are increasing, but there will be an increasing power demand. The society is not going to stop. The world economy is boosting. Everybody is able to afford better standards of living. And the poor class and the middle class are rising up. And so the simple example is that everybody needs AC now. Everyone wants to own a car. and we are also a part of that picture. So world will get more hungry for energy. There is more population coming up in the higher economic standard, and they will start using consuming more energy. So even if you are growing renewable, that might go to satisfy that increasing demand. So still the fossil fuel will stay mainly for energy. There might be some replacement for the vehicles, electric vehicles. That's a good thing which is coming up, and it will make the pollution less in our cities. But you can't expect to change this scenario overnight. So it will take some decades or maybe multiple of decades for this scenario to be reversed, that you are having a larger share of renewables and less share of fossil fuel. So this is the world we are living in today, and this is what is happening. Why we, so for everything we have discovered nice comfort, and for reducing our effort we are having appliances, and we have some useful appliances, some useless appliances also. But the number of appliances in our, if you count in your home, it will always be growing, it will never be reducing. So you keep buying more things. Dishwasher fortunately not there too much in India, but it's widespread in Western countries. Air conditioner is a necessity in cities like all the North Indian cities, and so we cannot tell people that you cannot buy these appliances. People will, if they can afford, they will buy. And for powering these appliances, you need energy, and you can see the world's energy consumption map. India is reasonably okay. People in the United States and all, they are consuming a lot, and China is also consuming a lot. So the need is there, and even your automotives are driven by fossil fuel. Even if you replace them by electric vehicles, to charge the electric vehicles, you need to generate electricity. So to produce electricity, we are having many ways how we are fulfilling that demand. We do oil and gas extraction, we give in petroleum refinery. The gas can be burned in a gas turbine, or the oil can be burnt in a gas turbine. And this is the small things. This is a typical modern gas turbine combined cycle power plant, which you should be able to see in outskirts of your cities. So most of the cities in Western countries are powered by gas turbine. In India also, there is almost 10 to 15% of total power is generated by gas turbines. So in fact, in Delhi, and the main electricity supply is coming from combined cycle gas turbine. So here, this small thing over here, this is the gas turbine where the fuel will be burned and power will be produced. You will have a generator over here, electric generator, and then the exhaust gases will go and they will do heat exchange, and this heat will be used to boil water, and that water you can make another steam turbine run. So this is why it's called combined cycle. You can get more efficiency. Or you can have a traditional coal-fired power plant or nuclear power plant where you are burning coal, or nuclear power is heating the water, and what steam power is used to produce power. So there you will see big chimneys because you want to condense the water. So this is the world we are living with. So fire, originally it was used for heating, cooking, protection from wild animal, and it helped to form communities, development of brain, development of language, Bronze Age, Iron Age, metal extraction, everything was possible because of this. Agriculture, curing disease, and all these things was good. So fire was a nice discovery. I don't know who has the credit for that, who is having the paper application for that, I don't know. But that time they didn't think about this. So nice discovery of fire, but what about global warming? So one thing is that we are burning fuel, and why it is bad. So it is bad because at present, you see these temperatures, they're continuously rising, Earth temperature are rising, and we are every day seeing this effects of global warming in terms of unpredictability of the weather. It's not more like the Earth will get warm uniformly and then the sea levels will rise. It's not like that. There's a very delicate balance of the environment, of the climate, and this global warming disturbs that balance, and then suddenly you start seeing floods in many regions, you start seeing fire in many regions. So last year there was a fire in Australia, and then last year it was in Amazon jungles, and then in California also. So these fires are getting more and more predominant, and they further increase the global warming. And you see the sea levels are rising. Venice, the city which is famous for its all canals, it is situated on the back bank of an ocean, and the entire city is submerged in the ocean. So there are no roads in that city. Basically, the waterways are used for all the public transport. So that entire Venice city was flooded by rising sea level. So all these examples, and then you see so much of floods everywhere. All these weird effects of climate change are happening because of global warming. And this is I showed you first a graph of energy consumption, and then I told you that in the graph of energy consumption, the major contribution is from combustion, burning of fossil fuel, and this is the CO2 emissions. So that these two graphs correlate very well. You're burning more fuel, you're getting more CO2 emissions, you're getting more global warming and all these harmful effects. So there is a big push everywhere in the world to reduce the fossil fuel dependence. But with a graph looking like this, growing exponentially, an economy always trying to increase, we are trying to get in a better economy. World, it's not like overnight it will be coming down. So what is the future? So we invented fire, but accidentally we burnt our hands also with fire. And now we are stuck in a world where we cannot deny the comforts of modern living to anyone. We want to have car, we want to have air travel, we want to have a lot of transport options, we want to have appliances in our home. And we cannot deny this thing to people, and we have to burn fuel to satisfy that demand. So we have burnt our own hands, but it is going to stay there. So as an engineer, what can we do? So the thing is that we are going to have a focus on sustainability. We try to reduce CO2. The only way to reduce CO2 is there are of course some methods about capturing carbon dioxide, carbon sequestration and all, but the fundamental most basic way to reduce CO2 emission is to make engine more efficient. So typically the IC engines and all we have on road is 15-20% efficient, which is put in the automobile, and the gas turbines will be giving around 30% thermal efficiency. Combined cycle gas turbine, where you are using the exhaust of gas turbine to run another steam turbine, can give you around 60% efficiency. So that is the maximum that we have. So why efficiency is important? Because you are burning fuel, and from that fuel, how much power you are getting. So if you need 1 unit of power, so for that 1 unit of power, how much fuel you are burning. And typically, if you see the automotive industry, automotives, we need to burn nearly 250 grams of fuel to get 1 unit of electricity. So 1 unit of electricity with which you are running your AC for 1 hour, or maybe running your geyser for 1 hour. So that is 1 unit of electricity that you have in your home. For that, 250 grams of fuel you have to burn. That is a typical guidelines. So 1 kg of petrol will give you 4 units of electricity, and 4 units of electricity we spend in a day like anything. We don't even think. So if you want to have CO2 reduction, you should be working on better efficiency engines. Try to improve the engine efficiency. Can we get 1 unit of electricity at 100 grams of oil? That is the question we should ask, and then we will reduce the CO2. Energy efficiency is important. Less pollutants. So CO2 is not a pollutant. It is leading to global warming, but there are no harmful health effects. So we are having other pollutants like NOx, carbon monoxide, nitrous oxide, carbon monoxide, particulate matter, all these things coming from fossil fuel burning, which are doing air pollution problem. We are seeing smog in winters in all the major cities all over the world. So that is all produced by the combustion process. When we are studying combustion, we can focus on reducing the pollutant emissions, which are harmful for human health. So that is another area where we can do work on improvement, improve the efficiency, reduce the pollution, and we can try to reduce the dependence. We can have combined power plants where we are taking some renewable also into account, and then we can. A good example would be that you depend on wind. You have a large wind power plant and a large solar power plant. The only issue with renewables is that if you are developing depending on wind, hydro, or solar power, they are not consistent. The sun will come only during the day. Wind will also not be blowing always, and hydropower also. There is when you are opening the dam, that is also ecological considerations. So you can have a base load power plant where you are using renewables for giving the power, and but your power demand always doesn't remain constant. So in the morning, typically people use a lot of power for getting ready when they wake up, and then in the evening also the power demand goes up. In summers, in afternoon you will have a large power demand in afternoon and evening hours, and in the night the power demand goes down. So the power demand is always fluctuating from a city. So we can have a base load power from solar, and when let's say if the sun is out and then I have a power demand, I can bring a combustion device. So only use the combustion fossil fuel device when it is necessary, whenever you are having peaks in the power demand. So that's why we call these units, the gas turbine units, as peaking units. So whenever there is a peak in power demand, we burn the fuel and get the power. Otherwise, you try to depend on the, whenever wind is blowing, whenever sun is there, you try to get renewable. So we will try to work with a renewable system, but still in a distant future, even if the renewables are supplying a lot of power, still we will not, it is very unlikely that with the uncertainty in the natural resources, the sun, wind and all, we will reach a state that completely we can replace everything by the renewable power. So we'll always need to have one backup power unit. Even if you are having a solar cell or something, you will like to have a backup DG. So whenever you are not, your battery is not charged, you can run the DG and get the backup power. So in apartments, always there will be a diesel generator, a DG. So try to have integrated systems based on the power demands and all. So that is one area where we can learn how to integrate fossil fuel with renewables. And then, yeah, so combustion, this is the pure combustion thing, so not important for power. And then we can go to different kind of fuel. So instead of conventional oil and gas, which is trapped in earth and releasing CO2, we can go for biofuels. And biofuels also, there was a lot of hype, but the issue is that you have to have land for making, doing that agriculture and generating that biofuel. So there are some unconventional fuels also, oil, shale, tar, sands, clathrates, which are not explored, and we can try to burn those fuels, which are replenishable, which can be renewed. So you burn that, but you are doing agriculture somewhere, or maybe you are replenishing them in some way, so that they can be coming under a category of renewables. So you are not burning the fossil fuel and making CO2. That CO2 is captured when you're doing that agriculture. So it becomes carbon neutral fuel. So you can go for carbon neutral fuel. So the challenges for engineers is that I have made an engine running on natural gas or petrol, and then you are telling me to burn a new fuel. So then research has to be done. It's not so easy to burn the biofuels and all this unconventional fossil fuel. If the nature of fuel is different, then the challenges in the combustion will be different. Okay, so some basics of combustion, like you can see, you can have this nice blue pre-mixed combustion. This is gas flame, which is mixed with air. So if you mix some air in the LPG stove, from the bottom when the fuel is coming, there is a port opening and air is also sucked inside. So when you mix fuel and air, you have a pre-mixed mixture, and then when you burn it, you get a nice blue flame, which is not polluting. But if you have a fuel separate and air separate, then you get this yellow sooty flame. And this is our common day experience. And what happens is that here we have pure fuel inside the flame, and we are having pure air outside the flame. So in the pure fuel zone, this high temperature will lead to some pyrolysis of this hydrocarbon. Inside the flame, there is no oxygen. So the combustion cannot go to CO2 and H2O. After combustion, you are not getting CO2 and H2O. In fact, you are just having hydrocarbons. Those hydrocarbons do very nasty reactions, and they make some particulate matter, polyaromatic hydrocarbon, and soot. So in this candle, in diya, and all this non-premixed flame, if you put a paper or something, some plastic on top of this without burning it, you can collect a lot of soot. So that particulate matter is leading to air pollution. So this is one category of combustion called non-premixed combustion. Even if you burn gas in a non-premixed mode, you will get soot. So this is there are some things which can be done. The designers can go for premixed combustion, they can go for non-premixed combustion, depending on their need. And these are some applications which I wanted to show. So for manufacturing also, combustion gas acetylene gas cutting, heating application. So these are for lighting also we used to do in olden days, not anymore. In Western countries, we can still use for heating, so recreation purposes. And food and chemical process industry, there for we are having furnace industry for heat treatment. There is a big furnace industry in India, a lot of small scale industries, MSMEs. They are working in this furnace area. So where you want to produce heat, then you're burning something. And metallurgical industry for steel extraction and all, to maintain high temperature you need. These are some applications, but the power applications are, this is the gas turbine, this is IC. So gas turbine cycle, what you do is that you do air intake. You have a compressor with the help of blades, and you compress the fluid, and then you high pressure fluid, high pressure, you inject fuel and you burn it, and then you get further high pressures and temperature. That high pressure temperature can do work in a turbine and go to exhaust. And this turbine will give power for the compressor. So this is the basic Brayton cycle and the gas turbine cycle. And in IC engines, basically you are taking the air and fuel mixture inside and then burning it, producing high pressure, and that high pressure is pushing the piston down. So you are using combustion for mechanical power, and there you don't get really very high efficiencies. And but this is a world. So we can think of replacing maybe a car, automotive car, by electric vehicle. But what about flying? All the commercial aircrafts are propelled by this aviation gas turbines. GE is also making these turbines, and many other companies, Boeing and all. So this is basically the gas turbine which I showed you in the previous slide. So you take air intake, do combustion, and run the turbine, and that turbine power will be used to run one fan. There will be a big fan. That fan will be sucking air, and it will be pushing it backside. So you get thrust. So your air travel is powered by fossil fuel, and we don't see a replacement in near future of rather than burning fossil fuel. Any renewable solar power or electrical power, it's very tough for a commercial aircraft with so many passengers and load to be propelled by anything else. So here we might not see a replacement very soon. We might replace the car with electric, but for that electricity also we have to run a steam turbine or a gas turbine or a coal power plant. So in marine applications, in truck, locomotives, heavy fuel or heavy applications, there the locomotives and all, in remote applications where you don't have the electrical lines. So all this is driven by combustion only. So there is some scope in studying combustion. Even maybe the cars will get replaced by electric, but still you can apply the knowledge of combustion in many other areas, which will be there in the future also. So that's why I like studying combustion. And yeah, I've just summarized whatever I was discussing in the previous slide. A lot of applications. Out of these many applications, maybe we are seeing some replacement of automotives, but most of the other things, there is no replacement in sight. Even in process industry, nowadays people are switching to induction furnaces, but they're also having their own limitations till what size you can do. So yeah, there is good amount of thing. And also we study combustion for this. There is one more application of combustion, which is written over here, that a man, after cleaning his car seats with alcohol, sets himself and car on fire while lighting a cigarette. So this is about the hazards of combustion, the fire safety. So if we are having combustion in our homes, we have to also worry about fire safety. If we are having burning combustible materials, the curtains, the furniture, which can burn, and if we have an electric spark somewhere which starts the fire, so we have to also study fire safety. So knowledge of combustion also helps in studying the fire safety. So that's why we study combustion, why the world is so much dependent on fossil fuel. So this is one graph which is showing the energy density. So any point in the lecture, you can just stop me anywhere if you want me to stop, and you can ask me or you can tell me I can go faster or slower. So the energy density per kg of working fuel. So here the highest density, energy density we are getting in fossil fuels, gasoline, methanol. Put it on, this is on a non-linear scale, exponential scale. If you put it on a linear scale, this is the energy density of all the hydrocarbons, methane, diesel, all these things, ethanol and all. And this is the energy density of lithium-ion battery. So when you want to store power, and mainly in the transport application, it is important for automotive, locomotive, marine ships, aircrafts. So only on the transport application, when you want to have some power source, the fossil fuels are the only choice, because the energy density of the battery is very low. The weight of the battery will be so high that the transport, the aircraft or the automotive will be so heavy that it will be difficult to propel it. So this challenge is being addressed by having better energy density in the battery. But this is the main reason why we have fossil fuel. At least for the transport application, it is going to stay. So now enough of applications. I will talk about the physics, why it is interesting to talk about combustion. We are doing CFD, computational fluid mechanics, and fluid mechanics is the essential component of that. But combustion is mix of more physics than just fluid mechanics. In combustion, you are having chemical reactions, chemical kinetics. So as a CFD engineers, now we'll think about as a CFD what I have to do. If I want to simulate combustion in a gas turbine, in an IC engine, in a furnace, in a rocket motor, so all these diverse applications. If I want to simulate combustion, what are equations I need to solve? So for fluid mechanics, I have to solve the Navier-Stokes equation, the pressure, density, velocity. Okay, and when you're having combustion reactions, chemical reactions, so you have to solve for the equations for chemical reaction, the Arrhenius expressions that you have for reaction rates. So all detailed chemistry. No fuel, no hydrocarbon directly goes to CO2 and H2. If you are saying CH4 is one of the simplest hydrocarbon. Methane is the simplest hydrocarbon that we have. Okay, one carbon atom, 4 hydrogen atom. That also, if you are burning with oxygen, it will not directly go to CO2 and H2. In fact, in methane combustion, we are having intermediate steps, elementary steps, and like you have studied in detailed chemical kinetics. So you get CH4 might go to CH3 plus H. Then you might get CH2 plus H. That H can interact with O2 and make OH. And then it will give out one O. That O can combine with CH, then it will give CH2O. So all these combinations are possible. So actually the actual reactions happen like this series of elementary steps. And for the methane, which is simplest hydrocarbon, we are having for a reasonable mechanism, which is called GRI Mach 3, which we use for CFD simulations, we are having 53 species and 325 reactions for methane combustion, which is simplest hydrocarbon. So that's how many equations that you need to put in to simulate combustion. So you have 53 species, so you have to solve transport equation for 53 species, and you're having 325 reactions. So every time step or every iteration in CFD, you have to solve those 325 reactions. So that is a big computational load on the computer. On the computational system, your computations will get very slow. So people try to come up with some simplification. They come up with 9 species, 19 species, reduced mechanisms, less reactions, and they show that still the accuracy is okay. Our simulations are accurate. So that is one area where people do a lot of work to have some reduced chemical kinetics so that we can do CFD simulations. So these are the extra equations that have come up, and with each species you are having one species transport equation. Those many equations have come up. And then if you are, of course, if you are having combustion, chemical kinetics, you are liberating heat. So then thermodynamics equation will be there, the equation of state, how you relate the temperature rise with the density decrease and the pressure change. So some thermodynamics is there. And once the temperature is increasing, you will be having heat transfer in the flame, from the flame zone to the other zone. You will be having basically a burnt zone where high temperature is there, and you are having an unburnt zone where low temperature is there. So there will be a heat transfer from the burnt zone to the unburnt zone, and with the heat transfer, the unburnt zone will get ignition, will get ignited. So that physics we have to capture. If we have to capture how fast the combustion is happening, so we have to capture the heat transfer very accurately. Also, when you're doing chemical kinetics, you're having multiple species. So the species will be there will be a diffusion of the species, there will be convection of the species. So we have to study the mass transfer also. And those equations we have to include, and they should be accurate. And if your fuel is gaseous, that is okay. You're happy with this. But if your fuel is multi-phase, you're burning oil, or you're burning coal, then we need to solve for the multi-phase equations, how the spray is forming and how the droplets are breaking up. So those equations are also there. And of course, in all the real devices, we don't have some simple laminar combustion like a candle flame. We have turbulence. If you are having flow in a gas turbine or a IC engine, it will be a turbulent flow. Otherwise, we will not be able to produce that power with that device. If you are having slow velocity of air, you will need to have a very large volume of working fluid to produce that power. So to have compact devices, we make the size of the device small and we bring in a lot of air at very fast rates. So that fast flow, high velocity will lead to turbulence. So we have to worry about turbulence, how it changes the fluid mechanics, how it changes the equation for turbulent transport in fluid Navier-Stokes look different. Maybe earlier speakers, they might have talked about the Reynolds average Navier-Stokes. Or nowadays, everybody is trying to do large simulations where they are trying to resolve the details of the turbulence. So we have to go for the RANS models, LES models to capture turbulence in the fluid mechanics. And in combustion, there is acoustics also. When you are having pressure changes, it can create some waves. So whenever you hear about acetylene torch, you will hear some noise. So combustion noise that is there. It is not so important in many applications, but in gas turbines and all, it is important that noise can actually do vibrations in the structure and it can lead to failure of the structure. So that is also one area where people are doing a lot of research, combustion acoustics. Particularly in gas turbine, in rocket motors for space vehicles and all, when you are having combustion, if there is some unstable pressure oscillation, it can lead to fatigue failure of all the components. So these are so many physics are there, and if you're having so many physics, so you can see in the simple candle flame itself. So you are having multi-phase. From the heat of the candle flame, the wax is getting melted, and this wax is carried by the wick, and this wick capillary action, and from there it is getting diffused, getting vaporized. So vaporization physics we have to capture. After vaporization, it is mixing with air, and then there is chemical kinetics reactions happening over here. And after reaction, there is a temperature increase. Because of temperature increase, there is fluid mechanics. The flow will be rising up, high temperature flow, and then this heat by radiation will melt the wax. Just in a simple candle flame, you are having so many physics. To do a simulation of candle flame in CFD is still a challenging problem. There is no satisfactory simulation in this area. Simple burning matchstick also. But simple matchstick and all is not useful. This candle burning is not useful for power devices. For the real devices, we need to have turbulent combustion. So let us just see the combustion speed that we need in an IC engine. So IC engine, let's say car is having an RPM of 4000 RPM, and then in 1 minute it will do 4000 revolutions. In 1 second it will do 4000 by 60, and then the piston is going up and down, and then the piston is traveling to topmost point. Normally you do spark, you give a spark and combustion happens, and then the piston immediately starts to come down. So maybe you just have this much duration, and the piston is coming towards top center and going from top to bottom. Maybe some 50 crank angles are there for the combustion to happen. So the time available for that 50 crank angles is 2 milliseconds. If your engine is running at 4000 RPM, if it is running at very high RPM, you even have less time. So in this time, you have to finish all the combustion. Otherwise, the piston will start moving down, and if the combustion is not complete, the pressure will not be rising, and it will not be able to do enough work on the piston. So you need to have fast combustion. So if you take a typical bore of a cylinder of an IC engine, a typical bore maybe 5 centimeter, maybe 10 centimeter bore. So which is something which you can have in hand. So 10 centimeter bore, 2 millisecond means you need a speed of combustion 23 meter per second. So the combustion should propagate at 23 meter per second. But the normal burning, laminar burning velocity, the burning velocities are in the range of 20 to 30 centimeters per second. Okay, so this what I need is 23 meter per second. But if you go and look at, let's say, if you're having a methane or gasoline air mixture and you give a spark, the speed of combustion is around 30 to 40 centimeters per second, so 100 times less. So then if you give a spark and if it doesn't burn fast enough, then it is useless. The engine will not be able to produce work. If you are taking 23 centimeter per second, then you will be taking 210 milliseconds. 210 milliseconds, the engine would have already done 4 or 5 revolutions. So your combustion speed is very, very important, and the combustion speed actually increases with turbulence. This is very nice, interesting thing. We will discuss about turbulent combustion. So combustion speed increasing with turbulence, and this is how it will look. ST is the turbulent burning speed. SL is laminar or just non-turbulent flow burning speed, and the ratio of that is around 100 to 100. So if this thing is happening, if I'm having a turbulent combustion, so you know laminar turbulent flow. So at low Reynolds number, you get a turbulent laminar flow. When you start increasing Reynolds number, you go into an unsteady flow, separated flow. Vortices start shedding, and then with a very high Reynolds number, the vortices are very small, and you get a widespread turbulence. So turbulence is nothing but just this. You are having a straight flow, fluid flow, but inside the straight fluid flow, you are having these eddies, which are leading to additional heat transfer, additional mass transfer, momentum transfer, and heat transfer. So they are leading to better transport of things. So these eddies, the flow will not be going in straight direction at high velocity. The flow will get unstable, and it will go in all random direction. So that is what we call as turbulence. So this turbulence is actually good for combustion, and because this turbulence, it will increase the burn rate. So how it increases the burn rate, we will discuss shortly, but this is the helpful thing. So reasons for high burn rate in turbulent flame. So if you are having a laminar flame, like a sheet, and then your burning will take place. So let's say one side you're having unburned mixture, other side is having burnt mixture. So if you're having a laminar sheet, which is like this red line, so then the area available for interaction is less. So I told you that these burnt products are giving that high temperature to the unburnt products to ignite the unburnt products. So if the temperature going from the burnt side to the unburnt side is faster, if the heat transfer is fast, then the unburnt products will get ignited fast and the speed of combustion will increase. So what turbulence, first effect, what it does is it increases the flame area. So by increase in the flame area, you have more of heat transfer from the burnt product to the unburnt products, and the unburnt products get ignited, and the speed of combustion increases. That is first thing. The second thing is that there are turbulence is at multiple scale. At large scale, turbulence will increase the surface area, and at the small scale, turbulence will increase the heat transfer rate. And so there is something called turbulent viscosity, which you might have seen in the RANS models if somebody has discussed in RANS models. So the viscosity is basically rate of diffusion. The turbulent viscosity is much higher than the laminar viscosity. So your better heat transfer is happening because there are small eddies which are carrying the heat from the burnt product, the unburnt products, and they are igniting the unburnt products, and that's why the speed of combustion increases when you are having turbulent combustion. So practically, we need turbulent combustion for any practical device to work. Even in gas turbine also, the flow is happening at high velocity, and there is only some time, small time available in which I have to finish the combustion. And if I'm doing laminar combustion, the speed of combustion will be useless. So I have to always do turbulent combustion. So turbulence is required, and this is what it is doing. There is this turbulent eddy, and this is flame sheet. So these turbulent eddies can increase the area of the flame sheet. The increase in area will lead to higher burning rate, it can also go inside the flame, and it can increase the transport of heat and chemical radicals from the burnt products to the unburnt products. That way it will increase the burning rate. And if you are having very intense turbulence, so there are some numbers to define turbulence. Some length scales are there. You have some length scale and velocity scales are there to define the turbulence. So if you are having very intense turbulence, very small scale turbulence, the Kolmogorov length scale is very small, and if the eddies are going inside the flame, they can even kill the flame. That is also possible. So this is very interesting physics. Actually, so these are the various length scale and the velocity scale. U dash is a turbulent velocity scale. SL is the flame speed. L0 is the flame length. L0 is the turbulent eddy size. So the smallest eddy size is Kolmogorov length, which is denoted by eta, and this is the flame sheet thickness. So depending on how big the eddy is compared to the flame thickness, and how strong the turbulent fluctuation is compared to the laminar flame speed, you can put different regimes. So when you are doing CFD modeling of combustion, first thing we have to understand is that our device, maybe IC engine or gas turbine or furnace, in which regime it is operating. So if you are having laminar flame, no issue, no need of doing turbulent combustion modeling. You can just choose a chemical reaction rate, which is itself is quite big. But if you are having this wrinkled flamelet, so this is this regime where only the surface area is increasing, then you are having one category of combustion models which you need to choose for the area increase effect. If the turbulence is penetrating inside the zone, then it is called corrugated flamelet, wrinkled flame with pocket. For this, there is another category of combustion model. And if the turbulence is penetrating inside the flame, that is called distributed regime. And in the distributed regime, flame can even extinct. There can be extinction of flame because it is breaking the flame. It is not allowing the chemical reaction to happen. The heat transfer is so high that the reactions lose all the heat. Without heat, there are no reaction. So higher heat transfer helps in increasing the burn rate, but too much of heat transfer can even quench the flame. This also you can see, if you might have noticed in your practical experience in a clean gas torch. When you start the flame, then there is a long flame, which is laminar. You don't hear that noise. And it is long because the speed of combustion is slow. You're having some flow velocity. Because the combustion is happening slowly, it is taking some time. That's why the flame is long. It is taking long time for the combustion to complete. Once you increase the velocity, you put the air also, oxygen and acetylene, both you open at high flow rate, you will start hearing that noise. So that noise is because of turbulence, and you will see a very compact flame, very short flame. The flame is short because the turbulent flame speed is high. So in very short time, the flow speed is high, but the turbulent flame speed becomes high, and it makes the combustion is complete in very small distance. So the flame becomes very compact. And then the third stage is that you try to increase the flow rate too much, and then suddenly the flame extinguishes. That's what you see, like zoop, and then the flame is out. So that's also can happen because of enhanced turbulence. So it's very interesting fine balance. When does the turbulence will quench the flame, and that's why we have to do turbulent combustion modeling. We have to, when we are doing RANs, we are just averaging the Navier-Stokes equation. We are having U is equal to U mean plus U dash. And then we are doing the averaging. We are collecting all the U dash terms together, and you are clubbing that in the eddy viscosity. So that is only the averaging of equations for Navier-Stokes, which is flow field equation. But you are having chemical kinetic equation, and chemical kinetics depends, the reaction rate depends on temperature. Exponentially, they depend on temperature. So if you are having turbulent fluctuation at any location, if your temperature is not only T, it is T mean plus T dash. So there is some mean temperature and there is some oscillatory temperature. Then your reaction rate will also be mean reaction rate and oscillatory reaction rate. And that, since it is non-linear, exponentially dependent on temperature, your mean temperature, mean reaction rate can be very different from the actual reaction rate. So that's why we have to put, we will not be, when you're doing CFD, if you're not doing LES or DNS, we will normally not be able to get these kind of images in simulation. This is a simulation done by Sandia Lab, which is one of the pioneers in combustion research, both experimental and simulation. And they have done this LES, and they are able to see the eddies inside the flame. But when you are doing practical CFD for industrial purposes, everybody in a big gas turbine or IC engine, they will not be able to do LES. So that's why we have to go with RANS models. So we have to average the turbulence. So average turbulence effects are seen by RANS on Navier-Stokes. Similarly, we have to do some turbulent combustion modeling. We will not be able to capture the area increase of the flame, but still we will be able to capture the high flame speed due to turbulence if we are doing turbulent combustion modeling. So for each regime, there are different turbulent combustion model, and we have to choose it appropriately, and we have to see whether it is giving us correct burning rate. So one important thing is that since combustion is having so many physics, and this physics are all laminar physics, and all this physics equation will be, we have to do some averaging if we are having turbulence. We have to have P mean and P dash, rho mean, rho dash, T mean, T dash, V mean, U mean, U dash, all the species concentration mean and fluctuating component. So with turbulence, everything we have to do averaging and a fluctuating component. And to close the fluctuating part, we have to do some turbulence modeling. So we do RANS turbulence modeling for fluid mechanics, and for chemical kinetics, we are having turbulent combustion models. So this is a big area and still a research area. People keep developing new models, and in fact, one of my PhD students is also trying to do some to study some turbulent combustion models using OpenFOAM. So this is a interesting research area, and now since so many physics are involved, the main issue with combustion CFD is that you cannot trust it. Maybe your Navier-Stokes equation was good, your RANS averaging was good, all that thing, you got a very nice code, but you did some mistake in the chemical kinetics code, or you made some assumption which was not okay, or you chose some turbulent combustion model which was not meant for that regime where the device is operating. So you have to know at what velocities my device is operating, at what Reynolds number my device is operating. For those Reynolds number and the kind of mixture that I have, what is the turbulent length scale, what is the chemical length scale, I have to know in which regime I'm operating. And maybe I didn't choose a correct turbulent combustion model. So I might be having very nice fluid mechanics package. I might be having very nice spray modeling, multi-phase, heat and mass transfer, all this equation, thermodynamics, the basic fluid mechanics package is very nice. But I didn't do the chemical kinetics correctly, or I didn't choose the turbulent combustion model correctly. So then whatever results I'm getting from this CFD is useless. So even after so many things are getting, so it is like an engine. You're having so many parts, and all the parts should work correctly. Even if one part is not performing its job properly, then the entire engine will fail. So it is very tough to get things right in combustion. If you are having something wrong, you will be wondering whether there is an issue with the turbulent combustion model, or there is some basic fluid mechanics thing which I've missed while giving the boundary conditions. So the flame is coming maybe very wide, or the flame is coming very long. So maybe it's turbulent combustion thing, or maybe my boundary conditions are not okay. So then you have to try many things, and these simulations will take a lot of time because they're solving so many equations. So you cannot also try a lot of things. That's why these combustion simulations are challenging, and that's why always we should try to have some validation. So in any combustion study, side by side, you should have a experimental validation. So that's why my PhD work, Professor Ravi Krishna in ISC, I was doing experimental and numerical studies both. And even in the industry, when I went there, when they are doing combustion CFD, they are not blindly trusting the models. So they are doing combustion CFD, and at the same time they are doing testing, small scale testing, lab testing, some validation testing they are doing in their laboratories, and they give us the data. So in Bangalore, mostly we were doing CFD in this industry, but we were getting experimental data from their lab facilities. So we have to validate, we have to see whether combustion is captured correctly, and then only we can use the CFD tool for more design changes. So in combustion, validation is very, very important. So many physics, anything can go wrong. And this is what I studied in my PhD. And of course, the reference is there. I'll not take too much time, but this is a gas turbine combustor normally that we have in industry, where the air is coming and fuel is injected, and there are some swirlers. These swirlers will make the air go in a spiral path so that you get more time for the combustion to get completed. If the flow is passing straight, there is not much time. So to complete the combustion, you try to give a swirling path. Also, this swirl helps in flame stabilization. Because the flow is moving so fast, flame stabilization is a big challenge. So it is like you're trying to light a candle in a wind. So the flow velocities are around 30, 40, 50 meter per second. And in 30, 40 meter per second, you're trying to inject fuel and maintain a flame. So you're trying to light a candle in a wind, and the flame will extinguish. So you need to have some flame stabilization. So in traditional swirl stabilized combustors, what happens is that because of the swirling flow, in the center you get some low pressure zone, and in that low pressure zone you get some reverse flow. So because of the reverse flow, the flame is stable there. The local flow velocities are reducing. Okay, and this is called swirl stabilized combustion. Local flow velocity will reduce by having swirl and low pressure zone in the center. But this leads to a lot of pressure drop. So we were studying in my PhD one another concept, trapped vortex combustor, where you are having main flow going from left to right, and in the side of the main flow there is a physical cavity, and in this cavity we are injecting air and fuel, and we are maintaining a separate flame, a small pilot flame inside this cavity, which will ignite the main mixture. Okay, so for flame stability we are having this separate cavity, and this thing has been studied earlier also. We were also studying this thing with some modification. In earlier studies it was two-side cavity. We were studying single-side cavity for flame stabilization. So first thing is the validation. So we want to study this thing numerically and experimentally. I will show you experimental results. But first thing was the numerical tool validation. Sorry. Yeah, numerical tool validation, and which was also published. So we took, see, normally, thankfully, in combustion community, there are many institutes like DLR, Sandia, which will do fundamental experiments in flame, at turbulent flame. Here you see turbulent non-premised flame, and they will give the data for free. They will put it on website. Anybody can download and they can validate their simulation with their experiments. So we did this thing. It took some time, and here the turbulent combustion model was important. So the turbulent combustion model that we used was eddy dissipation, modified eddy dissipation model, and this was proposed for some IC engine purpose, but we were using for steady flame, so we had to vary some settings. So after varying some settings in the model assumptions, we were able to put a good match with the experimental results. So this is the first step in any combustion study, a good validation, so that you know that whatever code you are using is able to replicate, is able to predict the combustion physics. So after doing this thing, then we did experiments in our setup. So I was explaining the flow is going from left to right. So it is. What you can see is that small flame inside. This small flame is able to sustain the combustion. So what is happening? The flow is going at very high speed from left to right. It's a turbulent flow. Of course, you can see the oscillations and hear the noise, and that flame will blow out if that small flame in the cavity is not igniting it. So this is leading to flame stabilization, and this cavity is shielded from the high flow velocity. So this is a sustaining combustion, but we also saw a case where the combustion was not sustaining. So here you see the spark plug. Once the spark plug goes off, then the flame goes out. The flame is extinguishing. So in this case, on the right hand side, the flame was very unstable, and as long as the spark was there, it was burning, and after you switch it off, it went on. So we saw these results, but we didn't understand why it is happening. So what we did is that we saw that the conditions are different, the flow rates are different, the equivalence ratio, fuel air ratio is different, and then we did CFD for this. So after doing a lot of CFD, what we found out is that when your main flow is coming from left to right, it will try to make a clockwise vortex in the cavity. And then in the cavity, you are injecting fuel, that fuel is burning, and it will try to ignite the main fuel flow. We also have fuel in the main flow. So it will try to ignite the fuel in the main flow. So this is a natural thing. But what we were trying to do based on the literature is that we were trying to make an anti-clockwise vortex. So we were injecting fuel, air from here, where I'm pointing my laser, and fuel from here. So we were forcefully trying to make an anti-clockwise vortex so that there is a good shear between the main flow and the cavity. And because of the shear, there's a good mixing. And because of good mixing, all of the main flow will get ignited. In the clockwise, the problem is that the main flow will just pass. There will be a top layer of main flow, where the fuel will just pass from the combustor and it will not get ignited. So this is the problem with the single cavity trap vortex combustor. So to avoid that, we were making an anti-clockwise vortex. But what was happening here, the main flow and the cavity flow were in opposition. And because of that opposition, the flow was getting unstable. So you can see the simulation images, the flame is not steady and it is just oscillating. So it was unstable. And we proposed a design solution for that we don't use cavity air injection for the anti-clockwise vortex. We use a guide vane. So the guide vane will take some portion of main air flow and it will introduce it in such a way that the opposite vortex is created, and that opposite vortex will help in better shear, better heat exchange between the burnt products and the unburnt products. It will ignite the unburnt products. And there are many advantages. One thing is that we don't need a control. If you are doing a separate air injection for opposite vortex, we have to control the flow rate. So we don't do that. We take a portion of main air only. So if the main air flow rate is increasing, this portion of flow which is coming inside will also increase. So automatically the things will adjust itself and we will always get a steady operation. So this thing we learned from CFD, that it will give a very stable operation. And after that, we did the experiments again. And I think, yeah, this was the original thing, original case where I showed you video earlier where the flame was blowing out. The flame was not stable. So for that case, when we did simulation, the pictures were like this. The flame is very unstable, always oscillating. And when we put this guide vane, it showed that it's a very stable, steady flame. So this thing we learned from simulation, but again, we cannot trust the simulation blindly. So we tried out this idea. Actually, we put a guide vane, and in the experiments, we saw that whatever we are seeing in simulation, a similar flame is made, and it is very stable. It is not blowing out. So here there was a video, but I think the video is not embedded in this one. But it's basically this kind of image is coming, and it is very stable. So there was a stable flame, but still we see that some of the mainstream flow is going out without burning, and that's where we tried a lot of things with CFD. So I'm not giving you complete details of the CFD, but see, the experiments are just showing you that something is stable, something is not stable. Here it is showing you the mixing is good or not good. But behind the scenes, a lot of CFD was done using that validated numerical model in the first place, which can capture the turbulent flame. Okay, so we had a validated simulation model. So we were making geometries, multiple geometries, and we were trying out various design changes. So one is this design change, where we use some struts to increase the mixing. So struts, like you are having some flow going up, and in between those struts, the flow is coming straight. So you are having a crisscross pattern. So in that crisscross pattern, the mixing is very good. And all of the burnt products will ignite the unburnt mixture, and you get a nice, well spread flame. All the combustion is complete. So this CFD basically helped us to do all these things in the background. And once we find out, we do a lot of optimization. So this was done after maybe some 30-40 simulations. We found out this design change. Earlier, we tried some straight struts and some other devices to increase the mixing, which were not useful. So we find something useful, then we can go and test in lab. So the main advantage of CFD is that it is cutting down the lab cost, first of all. The second thing is that you don't have insights. So when you're doing CFD, you can plot the vectors, you can plot the temperature profiles, and you can get the insights what is happening, why the ignition is not happening, why the temperature is not reaching there, why, in what way the flow is taking a turn, and you can do different design changes as well as you can do detailed post processing. So the main power of CFD is post processing. I see a lot of my students, they spend a lot of time, a lot of effort in making the CFD model, in making the mesh, geometry, CAD model, and then after that, the settings of the simulation, they run it one time, two time, and then they find that something is not matching. They do redo the CFD. So a lot of trouble they face in making the CFD model. But after the CFD model is made, they don't spend enough time to look into the results. And that is one advice I think for the young engineers that are listening to this talk, that always once you make a CFD model, you post process and don't just plot the quantity which somebody has asked you to plot. Somebody is interested in looking at temperature. You plot the pressure field, plot the velocity field, density field, the species field. So all the quantity, turbulence field, the turbulent viscosity field, everything you plot and you try to see what is happening. You try to understand the physics once you have got a CFD model. And that will give you some insight, very good insights, based on which you can make design changes. So that's how we should be doing CFD. And this was done in my PhD, because of having the simulations and the experimental rigs side by side, hand in hand, we could do some design improvement. And similar thing is done in industry also. They make a small rig, they do some experiment, and they match the simulation data with the experiment. Once the simulation data is matching with the experiment, then they do a lot of design optimization. They run a lot of CFD and try to improve the design. Once they are confirmed that the design change is showing some promise, they again take it back to the take it back and test it again in the lab setup. So experiments and simulations have to go in hand when you're doing combustion CFD, because it's very easy to get wrong. And I talked about these things, some combustion overview and turbulent combustion, why it is important, and about my PhD work. So I'll just talk briefly, maybe another 10-15 minutes, about industrial thing. In industry, we are using CFD, combustion CFD, for many things. One thing is that normally the job there is that when you're burning something inside the engine, how is the heat transfer taking place to the wall? And will my wall fail? So they are not working on topics like flame stabilization, because that problem is addressed long back. They are not working with combustion systems which are having unstable flame. So already the flame is stable, the combustion speed is high, the burn rate is high. So most of the original issues are already sorted out. They are mostly worried about the flame temperature profile, how that flame temperature is touching your metal, and what is the temperature on the metal. And if you're having high temperature on the metal, it can melt. So then they have to take care of some cooling techniques for cooling the metal. For IC engine, you are having water circulated around the metal. For gas turbines, they do some air injection through some holes, and they cool the liner, and they put some thermal barrier coatings, some special coatings to have low temperature on the metal. So metal should not melt. So that is their main purpose, and for that you do a lot of CFD in industry, which was day-to-day job. We used to get different geometries. We used to do the combustion simulation, and after combustion simulation, with some validation that the combustion simulation is accurate, we used to predict the metal temperature profiles, and then we used to give that metal temperature profiles to the mechanical design engineer. So the mechanical design engineer will see the temperature profile, and with the FEA model, finite element model, they will try to predict how much stresses are there in the metal. And if there is a cyclic flame coming, like start and shut down, so temperature is increasing, decreasing, there can be a cyclic stress and there can be a fatigue failure. So there can be a thermal fatigue failure and there can be a vibration fatigue failure. So the thermal fatigue failure is called low cycle fatigue, and it happens whenever you start a machine and you shut down a machine. So that time there will be stresses and then they will go back. So every time you start and shut down a machine, you get a thermal fatigue cycle. And whenever you are having vibrations in the engine, that vibration cycle will be there, which can cause fatigue failure. Normally, all the failures happen in all the industrial devices because of fatigue. Very rarely you will be having very high stress and something will fail because of high stress. That can happen in some accident situation, but normally you will have a small stress which is alternating, and over a period of time it will be failing by fatigue. So that's why all the components in industry are having some life, that you replace it after 10,000 hours, or you replace it after 5 years, replace it after this many kilometers of vehicle running. So those guidelines are there because of that, because of the cyclic nature of stresses. The things will get in fatigue and you have to replace that. So in industry, the main focus is that how to reduce the maintenance cost, how to reduce the replacement cost, and predict the fatigue failure. So for predicting the thermal fatigue, you need to know the temperature profile on the metal. To know the temperature profile on the metal, you need to do CFD, combustion CFD. So experiments, you cannot put a lot of thermocouples and you cannot get the temperature profile. So you need to do validated CFD. So that is the bulk of the job in combustion CFD industry. And of course, we are working on many advanced topics. So I was initially in GE Oil and Gas, where this was the job. But when we went to GE Global Research, they are working in combustion models to reduce emissions, to bring the NOx emissions down, to bring the CO emissions down, the particulate matter down. So for that also, there's another category of combustion model. So you are having the flame prediction, and then how these pollutant emissions are formed. You need to simulate the equations for this individual species, NOx, CO, and all. So you need to run some extra models, emission models, which are also available in Fluent. If you do a drop down, you will find a NOx model and all. So how accurate they are, there's a debate, but still you can try those things. So emission prediction is one more focus area. Also, in research, they try to predict the combustion noise, how much pressure oscillations. They try to do LES, large eddy simulation, and how much oscillations will happen in the combustion process, pressure oscillation, and how much vibration they can create. So that is also one good research area. So that is the thing. But the first study that I am going to show is basically about flame shape. Okay, so this is how a gas turbine combustor looks like in this oil and gas industry. It's an old gas turbine combustor. This is how it will look in a power generation. So the earlier gas turbine I showed you was for the aviation, for the aircraft. But in power generation, normally the size of the turbine will be very big. So what we do is that we have the compressor here. We take the air, compressed air, and we take a U-turn. And that U-turn, after that U-turn, the air will go into the combustor. So the machine size can be reduced. So we are not in the aviation turbine, we are having compressor, then combustion chamber, and then turbine. So if you do that, then the length of the turbine will be high. So that is having its own issues, because the rotor length will be high, balancing issues, everything will be a problem. So instead of doing that, we take a reverse turn and fix the combustor like this, so that it reduces the turbine length and the rotor length is also reduced. And after burning things inside, it goes to the turbine. And in power generation industry, the combustors, there is no single combustion chamber. There are like this multiple combustor cans. So what you see here in this combustor, actually in 3D, it looks like this, multiple combustor cans. And each combustion chamber is giving its high temperature flow to the turbine. So yeah, what was happening is that when they did some measurement in the field, they were seeing that in some of the cans, can number 1 and can number 1 and 4, some of the cans, the temperature profile was looking like this. So the temperature profile, if you measure from in a radial direction from bottom to top, it was bottom heavy. At the bottom, the flame temperature is high. At top, the flame temperature is low. And some other cans, it was top heavy. The flame was sitting towards the top. So it was temperature were high towards higher direction, this direction, and low towards the bottom direction. So it was top heavy, and this is a variation in temperature profile. And any variation in temperature profile can lead to fatigue stresses, variation in fatigue stresses, variation in stress, and variation in stress, alternating stress can lead to fatigue failure. So this was an issue, and we didn't know why it is happening, because all of the combustors are identical. They're getting supply from the same compressor air, and they're going in the same combustion in these 12 combustion zones, and then they are meeting in the same turbine. So all of them are identical, and why some cans are having temperature profile towards the top, flame is towards the top, and Y sum is having at the bottom. So experiments cannot tell that. You cannot measure the flame and in an actual real industrial turbine. So they wanted to do a CFD of that. So we made a CFD. We realized that there are 12 cans. We can utilize the periodicity, and we can just make 3 cans, because can 1 and can 3 are showing deviation. So we can have just can 1, 2, 3, and that will be 90-degree sector and 1/4 of the total domain. So 3 cans, 1/4 of 12th. So that's 3 can we can have, and we made a geometry and we simulated, and after simulation we found that actually that is happening in CFD. 1 can is having the flame towards the top, and another can is having the flame towards the bottom. So this is after validation and getting the mesh and everything, turbulence model, combustion model right. And so after a lot of model development, we found the model, and then we were finding that we are capturing the physics. And the reason for that was basically all the cans are similar, but the flow when it is coming from the compressor, in the compressor chamber, they are having some struts. These struts are there. So these struts are basically there to support the structure. So these struts are causing some flow disturbance. When the flow is coming from the compressor, it is getting disturbed by the struts. These are the 2 struts, and there is 1 strut missing after every 2 cans. So for 12 cans, we are not having 12 struts. For 12 cans, we are only having 8 struts. For cost cutting, maybe, or some other simplification purpose, 1 strut was removed. So that 1 strut was removed. So if you see 3 cans, between these 2 cans, there is a strut. Between these 2 cans, there is a strut. But between this can and the next can, there is no strut. This is a periodic model. So after this, there will be next can. So there is no strut. So that is leading to some asymmetry in the problem. And because of this strut, locally the flow was getting accelerated. This is like Venturi effect. And that flow is disturbed. So in 1 can, the flow was coming from, although the flow is coming straight, it was coming from right to left. Other can, it was coming from left to right. So it was taking a turn like this. So, and this turn was taking, because of this turn, basically the flow has to enter into this combustion holes. So in some of the cans, the flow was not coming inside from the top hole. In this can, it was not coming inside from the bottom hole. The flow was weak. And because of that, the flame in this can, because the top hole is not having enough flow, the flame was pushed towards the top, and here the flame was pushed towards the bottom. So this was a very interesting thing, and we published this in ASME conference, and this was told by CFD only. Okay, so this is one use of one example of using CFD for combustion, and that is one specific example. But normally what we do is that we want to nowadays capture all the details of combustion, the turbulent combustion, for capturing the actual physics, the burn rate, how fast the combustion is happening. Also for capturing the emissions, pollutant emissions, that will depend on the turbulent flow. If there is some turbulence causing quenching of reaction, you will get a lot of CO. If there is some turbulence causing quenching of reaction, you might not get NOx. So the actual high fidelity of combustion is nowadays the research trend. So everybody is coming up with supercomputers, 1000 CPUs, 1000 cores, Cray computers, and they are doing these simulations. And they're trying to predict the emissions more accurately. Also the flame oscillations, how the flame oscillates, and how it can lead to pressure oscillations. And the pressure oscillation can lead to vibration of the structure, the structure can fail. So people are doing these simulations nowadays. And so large simulations is a trend in the industry now. And LES is quality is dependent on grid. The more finer grid you have, the better you can resolve the details of the turbulence. Finer eddies can be captured. So, but where to put the grid size? If you're making a very fine grid, you're having too many cells, then your computational model will be heavy, and you will need more cores to do the simulation in a reasonable time. So that's a challenge. So we need to achieve a balance, how much you want to resolve. If you don't resolve enough, then you don't get enough accuracy. Your solution might be like a RAN solution only. So the grid size, how to determine, and on that we published a paper. And this is with acknowledgement to Professor Shantanu Dey. He is in, sorry, it's Professor Ashok Dey in IIT Kanpur. He guided us for this work. So basically, there is a turbulent kinetic energy spectrum, and in this one, you see where at what is the turbulent length scale. What is the length scale of the turbulence? You can have large scale eddies, you can have small scale eddies, and where do you want to put your grid size? So there are some turbulence equations which need to be studied. But basically, by knowing the flow velocity, by knowing the flow density, and the overall length scale of the problem and the viscosity, you can plot this diagram. This utility is there. Even my PhD student also working on this. He is also having this utility. It was developed by Professor Shantanu Dey from some textbook equation. Sorry, Professor Ashok Dey from IIT Kanpur. So you can plot this spectrum. You can find that what is the length at which the turbulence is ending and starting to dissipate. And this is the length where I can put my grid size for a very accurate capturing. If you want a little bit less accuracy, I can put my grid size here, and then I'll be capturing only half of the turbulence, and half of the turbulence is not captured. So I will know that what length scale is good for capturing turbulence. So what we did is that we did the simulations, and we found out that whether that criteria which is told by this graph is correct. So you can do a RAN simulation, and from the RAN simulation you can get K and epsilon, turbulent kinetic energy and dissipation rate, and you can find something called as Taylor length scale. So we found the Taylor length scale, and Taylor length scale is good. At Taylor length scale, your LES mesh size can be fixed. If your LES mesh size is matching the Taylor length scale, you are having a good enough simulation. So we found out the Taylor length scale, and then we found the length scale from this formula, from this formulas, and then we try to match these two, and then we found that there is a good agreement. So LES grid resolution in mm, non-dimensionalized, not in mm. So LES grid resolution predicted by the Taylor length scale and by this formula, they are matching with each other. So we can use the formula instead of doing RAN simulation. We can just use the formula and find out the length scale. So this was also published. And right now, last year, my student, although my PhD student is doing some work on turbulent combustion in IIT Delhi, and still some publication is yet to come out. Still is trying to do the validation of the simulation. One master student last year, he was studying the swirl combustors and how the fuel air mixing is happening. So this is also a very interesting study which was published in a conference last year, where you have to choose the correct turbulence model, and you have to do a good refinement near the fuel air to get a good agreement with the experiment. So this was basically about validation, and yeah, that's it. I think. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm here, and I'll just like to acknowledge many people who are involved in all those work. For my PhD, my lab mates Anand, Atul, Dinesh, Professor Ravi Krishna. In industry, my manager and colleagues were there, some counterparts which were working in Italy, and some US counterparts, Michael, and then other guys. So these are all the people from the industry, basically, which were helping me. So I have not yet put the IIT Delhi acknowledgements yet. So I have to put that also.
Thank you very much, sir, for delivering such a wonderful talk. Any participant having any question? Yes, any participant having any question, he can ask.
Excuse me, sir. Sir, I have question, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, regarding that candle flame, you said that this is very challenging. That till now it is not many multi-physics is involved in that one. Why that simulation is not possible, sir?
Yeah, so that's quite interesting. Actually, the combustion part is easy there, but the hard part is to capture the radiation. So the shape of flame will determine how much radiation heat transfer is happening from the flame to the pool. And if the radiation is, if you're predicting some radiation, and with this radiation some melting rate is there, and after melting there is this physics, this wick, in this wick capillary action, by capillary action, the liquid state is pulled. So that should be accurate. That itself is a difficult thing. The flow rate, to predict the flow rate in the capillary. Even if you predict that, if you are predicting, let's say some mistake is there, and if you're predicting slightly over flow rate, the flow rate itself is not fixed. If your flow rate is high, then your flame shape will be different. If your flame shape is different, then the radiation from the flame will be different, and the melting rate will be different. So it's a balance between melting rate, the flow rate from this wick, and the flame shape. So any one thing, if you are not capturing accurately, so the capturing the flame shape is a little bit hard. Capturing the flow in the wick is hard, and the flame shape can affect the melting rate. So basically, combustion in industrial application is easy, because in industrial application, you at least know your flow rate, which you can put in CFD. Okay, you know that air is coming at this velocity or this mass flow rate, fuel is coming at this mass flow rate, and you can put in CFD as a boundary condition, and you can get some flame. But here in this application, your flow rate itself is dependent on the outcome. So either you measure the flow rate somehow, and then you remove the candle part, you remove the wick part, and you have just measured some wax consumption rate, and that wax consumption rate, how fast the candle is melting in reality, that you have plugged in, and then you are not doing the full simulation. So I was talking about the combined coupled simulation, where the flow rate itself is determined by the CFD. So that is hard. And again, the second hard part is this natural convection. So this, with many students in my PhD experience, and now I'm seeing people who are trying to model simple LPG stove flame, and then they are not able to match the results, because the natural convection, the flow rising because of heating, that CFD codes are not good, which is very sensitive to the boundary condition. What pressure boundary conditions you are, see, any CFD domain you have to cut somewhere. Okay, so you're not like having infinite environment in which you can do the CFD. So you're having a flame, and then you're having an environment, you have to cut somewhere, and you have to cut at the bottom also. So at the bottom, when you're cutting the domain, what boundary condition you're giving: flow inlet, velocity inlet, pressure inlet, ambient pressure. At the side also, when you're cutting the domain, what boundary condition you're giving. Maybe you can make the domain very big, and after that, the effect of boundary condition can be minimized. But still, it's very challenging. People have tried in labs. I've seen many people. But just to get a LPG gas stove flame also, natural convection with correct boundary conditions on the bottom side and the left side. Fuel injection is easy. Fuel and air injection is easy. But this ambient conditions, in an ambient environment, to capture the flow, natural flow, is tough. So that way, gas turbines are better, because they are having a closed geometry. So you don't have to worry about the boundary conditions on left and right, on top and bottom. Only you give air inlet, fuel inlet, and there is a pressure outlet or velocity outlet or outflow boundary condition. So industrial devices are easier to do simulation. And all this natural flame, natural convection, you try it yourself, you will find it harder.
Sir, and if that means in the flame candle, if the experiment is anybody is proof, then if we I'm saying, sir, that if any research is going on in regarding this candle flame.
I'm not aware of. Maybe, yeah, I'm really not aware of that, because in CFD, I've not seen any CFD. Basic candle flame, it was basically discussed by, it is very interesting, it was discussed by, what is the scientist name? It is a very famous scientist in electrical, Michael Faraday. So actually, Michael Faraday first studied the candle flame. So he was the inventor of electricity, but he was also the first person who looked at the combustion discipline systematically. And he showed the fluid mechanics, heat and mass transfer, all these things very beautifully in a series of lectures. So you can Google these things. Michael Faraday's lecture on candle flame. There are 7 lectures. YouTube videos are there, and he explains very nicely this physics. And that is, I know from textbook, but from the research perspective, because I've been working in industrial combustion, didn't get a chance to the only interest in a candle flame could be from academic purpose. There's not much industrial application of this device. So if somebody is doing research, I'll be very happy to know. Please mail me. I'll also include that reference here. But I'm not aware of any research going on. Some chemistry people do this. Chemistry people, they have a flame and then they put some chemicals in the flame and then they see the radiation, the different colors of the chemicals coming out from the flame. So, but the basic fluid mechanics and how the flame is formed, the combustion physics, I don't think anyone is doing. Because not so interesting.
No, any software is giving accurate simulation.
No, I'm just telling my opinion that it is a very difficult problem. If you can do simulation of that, I'll be very happy. It's not about the software. It's about how many equations you have to solve, what kind of grid you are making, how you are modeling the transport in the wick, and how you are capturing the flame shape. What is your chemistry? Because here the paraffin wax will be a mixture of hydrocarbons, and so many hydrocarbons when they vaporize, and how they're burning with air, the detailed chemistry of so many hydrocarbons. So I'm telling you, the physics involved are so many that it will be tough to do. But
Sir, in Cantra, we can do that is open source for chemical equations solving for CFD.
There are some basic flames defined in combustion literature. There is one opposed jet diffusion flame, where you put the fuel from one side, air from one other side, and the velocities are fixed. You know the velocities. Candle flame, you don't know the velocity. So in that one opposed jet diffusion flame, you have fixed velocities. Both of them come in contact with each other, and then they burn, and then they leave from top and bottom. That is opposed jet diffusion flame. That is available in Cantra. You can try that. It will give you the profiles along the center line, along the fuel and the air center line. It will give you the profiles. You have a freely propagating flat premixed flame. So flat premixed flame, you will have a fuel air mixture coming up, and then the flat flame will be formed, and then the reactants will be going to the flame zone and converted to products and come out from the other side. So it's a one-dimensional flame. One-dimensional opposite flame, one-dimensional flat flame. Here you are having 2 dimension. That is also one thing which will make it slightly tough.
Okay,
so
thank you, sir.
Cantera, you can do some basic flames are defined there. You can do those things. It's a good exercise. Freely available software, tutorials are also there. People can try it out. It is just addressing one part of the problem. Cantera is only addressing chemical kinetics, thermodynamics, and little bit fluid mechanics. This much laminar flame, yeah, and heat transfer. So yeah, so it is doing that thing, and only in 1D, one dimension. That is the constraint. When you want to go 2 dimension, 3 dimension, that you need to do CFD. So in CFD, you have to solve the fluid mechanics equation in 3 dimension.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any other participant having any question? Yes, anyone having any question? Okay, then thank you, Agrawal sir, for delivering such a wonderful talk. You have covered your presentation very nicely, and especially sharing your experience at industry on simulations of combustion and the turbulence phenomena. I hope that would be very useful to the participants in understanding the role of CFD engineer in the industries. You also shared your PhD work, which was really good. And you have covered your presentation from fundamental, right from starting from combustion application to combustion multiphysics and then going into simulation part. It was really good presentation and pretty engaging one as well. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Maheshi. And it was a pleasure interacting with the audience and trying to communicate my passion for this subject to as many people as I can. So it was a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. And to our participants, the next session will start at 2:30 p.m. It was of Dr. Tapan Sen Gupta from visiting professor. He is in IIT Dhanbad. So see you all at 2:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone.